What if I told you the song 7 by Taylor Swift and the movie Matilda are the same exact story told within the lens of cottagecore aesthetic?
What?
Would you want to escape this sad excuse of a year named 2020, run away to a countryside cottage with a Taylor Swift cardigan, allow me to grab you by your pigtails?
You mean my pigtails?
Are you a pig, Amanda?
And I will swing you away from this dark place of 2020, and just like that, you'll end in this paradise.
That was so fun.
Yeah.
Flowers, good vibes, and Anthony Aiken Jr., the housewarming gift you never asked for. Subscribe today.
Oh God, this is such a blast.
This is a real damn blast.
Now, as a brother from New York, I never in a million years thought I'd be searching up aesthetics, and I damn sure did not think I'd be listening to Taylor Swift.
I ain't never ever seen you act like this before.
Here I am, sipping the sweet tea in the summer, or whatever that hypnosis tea was in Get Out.
So you're comfortable enough, right?
It's perfect.
The basis of my education via YouTube is cottagecore being an aesthetic inspired by Western agricultural life, yet romanticized. So pretty much think about nature, being woke and down with the cause, flowers, lesbian culture, whatever. Quarantine 2020 with that Snapchat filter that makes you look sexy. Now, as I was researching the cottagecore aesthetic, Miss Honey was being used as the poster child of cottagecore.
Lavender. What's my teacher like?
And you know what's funny? I was watching the new Taylor Swift documentary where she was talking about folklore.
Turned out that like everybody needed a good cry as well as us.
And when she got to 7, she was talking about her inspiration being from a kid having a temper tantrum in a supermarket.
When I see a kid throwing a massive tantrum in a grocery store, like part of me is like, man, I feel you. Like,
so this is one example of Taylor Swift being a symbol of cottagecore. So, with Taylor Swift describing this encounter at the supermarket, one would say she is empathetic, sweet, a ray of sunshine in human personified form. But most importantly, one would probably think, this reminds me of somebody. Reminds me a whole lot of Miss Honey. So let's break it down. The love of flower, the floral blouses, the tea, the swing in the front yard, the hospitality and the openness to provide warmth and love for someone else in need.
Now, you all remember how scary your first days at school were, so I'd like you to be especially nice to Matilda.
Remember, like that one kid throwing a temper tantrum in the supermarket, Matilda was really going through it at home. You know, her parents were the absolute worst. They only wanted her to watch TV, no books. And on top of that, they didn't even remember her age.
You're only 4 years old.
6.5.
How old is Matilda?
4. I'm 6.5, Mommy.
You're a liar.
But like Taylor Swift at the store witnessing the kid have a temper tantrum, Miss Honey witnessed Matilda's greatness. And she would soon be that one friend that Matilda needed.
Matilda longed for a friend. Someone like the kind, courageous people in her books.
Did I mention that Miss Honey literally lived in a cottage? Like literally lived in a cottage.
She found a small cottage, and she covered it in honeysuckle. She finally got her freedom.
Good for her. A young woman is you.
This was 2020. Miss Honey would be amazing at Animal Crossing. She'd have Black Lives Matter in her bio, and she'd have her pronouns, man. She's with it. Okay, so after watching Matilda, which was already one of my favorite films, I started to see it in a new light, the cottagecore light. And then I listened to Folklore.
Beautiful things.
And I'm like, okay, I get it. Because the same details that I just mentioned to describe Matilda are all details in the song 7. Let's break this down one by one. Let's start with the swing.
Please picture me in the trees. I hit my peak at 7 feet.
Okay, so I think that Taylor does reflect on her own childhood too. And I remember Homie in the session, he talked about how the last great American dynasty was perfect between storytelling and then Taylor talking about her own personal life.
Like, even though it's not till the very end when you spin it around, and even though the story is about someone else, I think it's the most revealing thing. I think it's so deeply personal.
So with 7, I know that Taylor grew up on a Christmas tree farm. I know she was probably on them swing sets over the creeks.
Over the creek.
The line, I hit my peak at 7 feet.
7 feet.
7 feet fine, 7 deadly sins when peeking out of my blind. A sunshine, a cottage enriched with tea, yarn, a barn, a warm plate at Christmas tree farms. But you stepped to my home and buttered me up with Wizard of Oz from sepia tone to color.
It could mean 2 things to me. It could mean literally being on a swing and you hit your peak and then you come back down. But I also look at it as I hit my peak at age 7. And for Taylor Swift, I understand how that could possibly make sense because she did go on to move and pursue a music career at a very young age.
I have to be honest with you, this song was seriously finished 5 minutes ago.
And in that moment, I started to think a lot about Miss Honey and how she talked about the childhood swing in her life.
Why is there a swing?
A girl I know used to live in that house.
So pretty much Miss Honey goes on to talk about her childhood, how her dad was a doctor and was never around. Her mom passed away at a very young age. And suddenly this person right here, this demon, which is her aunt and also the principal of the school that Matilda goes to, takes over the household and gives Miss Honey the worst childhood she can imagine. You know, she kind of reminds me of every teacher I hated during parent-teacher conference, or that one biology teacher I had at college, and he pretty much ruined my opportunity to get signed to a record deal with J. Cole. Yeah, that's a story. That's a true story. I'm gonna tell that at some point. The swing takes place in both Matilda and 7. Now, let's talk about the sweet tea.
Sweet tea in the summer, cross your heart, won't tell no other. And though I can't recall your face, I still got love for you.
Now, they drink tea a lot in Matilda. It's actually a common theme, but I actually really want to pay closer attention to this line right here. The cross your heart, won't tell no other. That's a promise you can't break.
Thanks for not telling. Best friends don't tell.
The irony here, she has this huge secret. And then Taylor continues,
Your braids like a pattern, love you to the moon and to Saturn, passed down like folk songs, the love lasts so long.
These lines sort of represent the wholesomeness that comes with a youthful friendship. Sort of like Lavender and Matilda. You know, they hit it off really early. And the lines, love you to the moon and Saturn, actually refer back to a popular children's bedtime story. This one, guess how much I love you. And it's responsible for the original quote, I love you right up to the moon and back. Not to mention, your braids like a pattern remind me a whole lot of, y'all remember this character? Well, this same character that got tossed into Cottagecore aesthetic was also getting her hair braided by Miss Honey in the classroom. Miss Honey was a real one. And as for the lyrics representing the hospitality and the openness to provide warmth and love for someone else in need, these lyrics right here.
And I've been meaning to tell you, I think your house is haunted. Your dad is always mad, and that must be why.
Taylor Swift places the emphasis on the main character being a young, naive, and innocent person. You know, they have not been corrupted by society and by the world. So therefore, they see an abusive situation that they do have concern over. They see it as haunted.
Your dad is always mad.
Matilda's dad was always mad.
Dad?
What do you want? Shut up and leave us alone! What do I have to do to gain respect around here?
You can't leave out this one classic line from Matilda right here.
I'm smart, you're dumb. I'm big, you're little. I'm right, you're wrong. And there's nothing you can do about it.
It's also important to note that Matilda's dad was in cahoots with the principal due to a little car deal that went, I guess, right or wrong, depending on how you look at it. But in the long run, the principal at the school, the house that she lived in was haunted. I mean, y'all remember the basement.
I think your house is haunted.
Wait, hold on. Forget the house. Y'all remember the principal's office? She had the chokey.
If you can't handle the little brat, I'll lock her in the chokey!
She literally took Matilda and she put her in the chokey. Not to mention the homie Bruce. Don't get me started with the homie Bruce. If we're talking about cottagecore aesthetics, you know, baked goods and cottagecore go hand in hand. Again, baked goods and cottagecore go hand in hand. This man Brucey ate a whole chocolate cake, double fudged. Double fudged. That's the most cottagecore thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
You wanted cake, you got cake. Now eat it.
And y'all seen the way Matilda rooted Brucey on?
You can do it, Brucey! You can do it, Bruce!
Doesn't that remind you of what Taylor does, you know, at the award show? She be hyping people up, especially my guy Kendrick. Okay, so we mentioned the swing set, we mentioned the sweet tea, we mentioned the haunted house, we mentioned the parents. Now let's talk a little bit about the living situations. You have these lines from Taylor.
And I think you should come live with me and we can be pirates. When you won't have to cry, we'll hide in the closet. And just like a folk song, our love will be past.
Why don't you run away?
At 7 years old, in a villa with some money, or in cottage with a friend like Matilda and Miss Honey, it could be a better day. Even when my nose is runny, I could always have a laugh, girl. At 7 years old, in the summer when it's sunny, sipping tea and see your nature as you laugh at something funny. Go inside and get a snack, and if you ever feeling sad, please just tell me where you at, girl.
Okay, so here are some coincidences just for the purpose of the video. The song is titled 7, and Matilda was age 6 turning 7 in the movie. Or an even bigger coincidence, Miss Honey was reflecting on a time when she was 7.
I am not 7 years old anymore, Aunt Trunchbull.
Okay, so now for the most important lines in the song.
Picture me
Please picture me in the weeds
in the weeds.
before I learn civility. I used to scream ferociously. I take the line, please picture me in the weeds, as Taylor being on the wild side. Think about it. Being at one with weeds and screaming ferociously is kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy that Taylor made an album Reputation. Think about it. That album was reckless. It was in your face. It was nasty. It was grimy. It was wild for Taylor Swift to make Blank Space. I think it's important to note that this is how Taylor now wants to be remembered. She says, please picture me in the weeds before I learn civility. Civility is formal politeness and courtesy in behavior or speech.
I've been trained to be happy when you get a lot of praise.
Which to me means after age 7, she left the natural and wild side of her.
Sometimes you have to be a little bit naughty.
She talks about this in Miss Americana, which by the way, I just reacted to.
You know, my entire moral code as a kid and now is a need to be thought of as good.
It's all about adjustments. Taylor had to learn civility to prosper in an industry that's dominated by male privilege.
Women in entertainment are discarded in an elephant graveyard by the time they're 35.
Similar to Matilda going through this school system that was clearly a detriment on her, she had to learn how to use her powers to defend herself.
Wow.
Now, I'm not exactly sure why Matilda would use her powers on Honey Nut Cheerios. Like, I could understand Cinnamon Toast Crunch. You know, maybe even some of them fruity flavors like Fruity Loops, Apple Jacks. You know what I'm saying? But Honey Nut Cheerios?
That is blasphemous.
The last lines of the song read,
Sweet tea in the summer, cross my heart, won't tell no other. And though I can't recall your face, I still got love for you. Pack your dolls in a sweater, we'll move to India forever. Pass down like folk songs.
These lines represent a fantasy, one that comes true in Matilda. Instead of moving to India, though, Matilda gets adopted by Miss Honey.
Because she's a spectacularly wonderful child and I love her.
Adopt me, Miss Honey.
Not to mention, you know, the parents didn't really give up much of a fight.
And I never understood you, not one little bit. Who's got a pen?
And like a folk song that lasts so long, they lived happily ever after in an old house that became a home. Similar to Taylor Swift not having to be civil all the time. or Matilda not having to use her powers anymore.
And Matilda never had to use her powers again.
So what's with all this civility? You know, in the long run, living on the wild side did a whole lot. In the end, Miss Honey is free from her toxic aunt, and the school system is free from that disgusting principal. Same person, by the way. Matilda is free from her abusive situation at home and her annoying brother. Last but not least, Taylor Swift is free from those idiot men who purchased her masters, and she can now re-release all of her music. If you want to see more Cottagecore videos or Taylor Swift videos, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. I got a bird on my head because it's Cottagecore. And at 40K subscribers, I got cardigans to give away. But you have to be following me on Twitter and Instagram, Anthony96JR. Say hello. I ain't bougie. I will do Christmas Tree Farm in my Christmas video. Should be out this week. Most importantly, thank you for all of the support. It's time for a hug. Bring it on in, guys.
7 feet fine, 7 deadly sins when peeking out of my blind. A sunshine, a cottage enriched with tea, yarn, a barn, a warm plate at Christmas Tree Farms. But you stepped to my home and buttered me up with Wizard of Oz from sepia tone to color.